I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, take the roll.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Wakefield. Here. Knutson. Here. Kennedy.
Here.
Ruck.
Here.
Hall.
Here.
All right, this is an opportunity for citizen comments. If you have a comment on any issue before the city that is not currently on tonight's agenda, you can comment on that by stepping to the podium, identifying yourself and your address. Try to keep your remarks brief. Try not to repeat other people's remarks. So, does anybody have a comment? Any comment? Any comment? Any comment? All right, close that portion of the agenda. Consent agenda.
Approve the meeting minutes from the May 19th, 2025 regular council meeting. Approve the claims in the amount of $458,336.76.
I'd like to pull that item, please.
Approve the mayoral appointment of Tori Boomsma to the Police and Fire Commission, and approve the annual renewal of liquor license applications for the period of 7/1/2025 to 6/30/2026.
Move to approve with the exception of B.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item B. Roll call?
Morissette.
Yes.
Wakefield.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Kennedy.
Yes.
Ruck.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Okay, motion is passed. Consent agenda is passed with the exception of item B. Item B.
Well, yes, we discussed this. Our finance director brought that to us at finance just a half hour ago, that there was an entry in the payables that had already been paid at a previous meeting. So that was just a clerical error, that was included. It happened to be for $38,265.68, which was first quarter room tax dollars to the chamber. And that we had actually already approved that prior. So when we deduct that amount from the total that's published on the agenda, I move to approve payments in the amount of minus that 38,000. So the actual new total would be $420,071.08. Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second to approve payments. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Lake Malibu drawdown request from the Lake Malibu Association. Staff on this? No.
Hi, I'm Mike Latch, city resident. I'm also on the Lake Malibu Association.
And I'm Warren Schneider, also on the board of the Lake Malibu Association.
Yep. So I guess there are specific questions, anywhere you want us to start on the drawdown request?
Just the reason for it, I think it would be just an explanation what we are asking for and why.
Okay, yeah, this is, the drawdown is a response to the dam breaches that happened when the Willow River Park Dam was removed. We lost a lot of depth from sediment, and the lake has since suffered from lots of algae blooms and loss of depth. And a drawdown, which has been demonstrated through previous drawdowns and by studies from our Stantec, who is a engineering company, demonstrate that if you draw the lake down, leave it exposed for a period of time, typically over the winter, that the sediment will, first of all, some of it will flush through and go into the deeper part of the lake where it's less of a problem. The remaining part, the sediment will compact and compress, and it'll stay that way when you bring the lake back up. And it also has the beneficial effect of killing Eurasian milfoil, and it begins to control the carp situation as well.
Can you go over the timeline for this, please?
Certainly, the plan with the DNR, this is all subject to DNR approval, which is why we need your help tonight. Is the plan is to start in early September and draw down at the rate of 5 inches per day, which allows the fish and the mollusks and the reptiles to all move to appropriate habitat before winter frost sets in. And historically, we've had no bad experience with fish, mollusks, reptiles as a result of the drawdowns. Then it will be drawn down through the winter, and probably in May, we would allow it to naturally refill. So by about the 1st of June, it would be back up to its normal height.
Thank you.
So in that May to June time zone, then, like, would any watercrafts be allowed in the lake?
I don't know that we've actually talked about
Okay.
that, but from between May and June, when it's refilling,
Yes, when it's-
I think it would kind of depend on just how fast the rain comes and the snow melt, and that there probably would be some restrictions early,
Okay.
but when it gets back up to close to normal, I would think that it would open for.
And excuse me if this is not the most brilliant question, but what about ice fishing then? And I don't ice fish, just so you know. So-
Well, first, I would say there's very little ice fishing on Lake Malibu.
Okay.
And even in the normal season. But there will be a pond remaining. It'll be shallower, but still adequate for all the fish.
Okay.
And depending on the currents, as you know, there's open spots in the ice as it is. So there'd be no reason people couldn't ice fish, except they got to be really careful of what the ice conditions are.
Sure.
So Warren, just for a historical perspective, how many drawdowns have we had on Lake Malibu?
The exact number, do you know, Mike?
I think the most recent was 2014 for a dam repair.
Well, the 2014 was for milfoil control.
Milfoil, yeah.
And in about 2004, we had a deeper drawdown for dam repair. So those are the only two that have happened in my time on the lake, which is since 2000. And there were some accidental ones before that. And Susie, do you know, were there any intentional ones?
Oh, like 1983 I had seen for a carp project.
It was the milfoil issue that we had, and then the drawdown for the
For the
dam
dam
repair.
repair, mhm.
I've been there 30 years, and those are the two that
Those are
I
the two.
recall.
So
Yeah.
recent history, two.
Okay, all right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I understand, this seems so much more beneficial and probably cost-effective than dredging.
Oh, yes.
For a million reasons. Just curious, do you guys have overwhelming support from all the landowners? Are there a few people that say, my lake's gonna disappear for a year? I mean,
Well-
is the majority rules on these decisions, or?
We value the public opinion on the lake,
Right.
obviously. And yeah, we have a very strong approval for this. And yes, there's no question that when the lake is drawn down, it's annoying, but it's after the main lake recreation season.
True.
It comes back up before the following one, so it's primarily through the winter. So little impact.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question that I'd actually like to address to a city staff member, Mr. Kip Peters. I understand that you would be in charge of operating the dam for the drawdown. Do you have any concerns? Maybe I'm misreading this, but
Yeah,
if
we
you
would.
could comment.
We are responsible
Yeah.
for the drawdown, or the steps.
Kip Peters, Utility Director. No, I mean, basically, we just need to be told by DNR what we need to do. You know, is it how many feet per day? I know they're saying 5 feet per day, but that doesn't,
Inches.
or 5 inches per day, but that doesn't mean anything to me. So we would need, you know, just a set schedule, you know, on a daily basis, what they need us to do. I mean, it's easy enough to draw, you know, open the dam or close the dam, whatever we need to do. And speaking of the dam, we are going to probably be doing some work on the dam, possibly, maybe in conjunction with this. We haven't got that far yet, but.
And part of the steps for drawdown are going to be how much it's raining in the fall, too. So the more rain that's coming down, you have to draw it down slower.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why we would, we would need a set schedule from
Yep.
the DNR, I'm assuming, on what we actually need to do.
So the Malibu Association is requesting this, and I know you have worked hard for a number of years to get DNR on board with it. So I appreciate that. It's important for the homeowners. But you'll be executing, so working directly with Wisconsin DNR about step by step what they dictate. Like I said, if there's a big sudden rainstorm, you'll maybe be adjusting it. How do you expect that'll be much time or hours from your staff taken away? from other projects?
My staff is there every day. We check the dam every day. So, it just depends on what they come back with, what we need to do. I haven't seen any plan on anything other than the letter from Stantec and a few informal meetings.
And so the fact that that's under the word funding, it really is, there's no manpower dollars, but is there any additional funding required for that? But just, because it says on sheet funding, that's where you put that public utilities will perform the dam drawdown.
I mean, the only thing that we would, unless there's something I haven't seen yet, but the only thing that we would have is just man hours.
Okay.
And that's just a matter of just controlling the up and down, of the dam, so.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anybody else?
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion of possible action on ordinance 8-25, amending chapter 141 of the municipal code of the city of Hudson for short-term rentals.
Thank you. Obviously, this is a long time coming. It's a lot of work from a lot of different people. I want to thank my staff, Tiffany and Nick, with some policy recommendations or guidance on what we do with short-term rentals moving forward. Attachment A, the first attachment, the potential policy revisions are a really good overview of what to look at as we walk through the actual proposed ordinance. Obviously, if there's more discussion that needs to occur, the next item on the agenda is a continuation of the moratorium, if that's what is desirable to the council. So I'll walk through kind of the high level, each of the policy recommendations based on the incredible feedback we got from our community. We had two really well-attended open house sessions, as well as an online survey tool that people filled out. I think at both of the in-person open houses, we had at least 50 people probably around that. Myself, Nick, Tiffany, Brent, and Becky were all in attendance at both of those sessions. So it was good to hear from people, both kind of more pro and more against. It's good to hear from everybody. So as I walk through this, again, I'm just gonna follow the attachment in the packet. The first one was a limit licenses to 1 per 750 people as determined by the Department of Administration. That would allow up to 25 licenses. That gives us a little bit of leeway in terms of additional ones that may be operating without a license currently. But the key component to this is that there's only 15 licenses per planning district as defined in our comprehensive plan, which is updated every 10 years. So with that, there are technically 9 planning districts in the city of Hudson. 1 and 2 in this ordinance would be combined. So that would be your downtown overlay as well as the rest of residential downtown. And then, throughout the rest of the community. District, I think 9 is one that is the east side of Carmichael. So there's really not much there yet because we just haven't simply annexed that far out. So that's how that would look. So no more than 15 per planning district, maximum of 25 per or in the community. And then as we add 750 people, we'll add more, or the council will discuss it in the last meeting in January. The next.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How many are in the planning district 1 and 2, which are combined?
1 and 2, approximately 12 currently.
12, no, okay.
I mean, the reality is planning district 1 and 2, downtown is a desirable place for people to want to do this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where they.
The proximity to downtown so that people can walk into,
Yep.
walk to the bars in downtown.
Yep.
and walk to the
Becky, correct
restaurants.
me if I'm off. I think I'm.
Right, you're right.
Yep. The next one is that they need to be owner occupied. The one change in this one is before it was 210 days. The actual ordinance is 183 days required. Nick, you can probably add some narrative as to why that was adjusted, but we looked at other communities' ordinances. I want to say, what community was it that we looked at closely?
Baraboo or the Dells, but.
Yeah, yep,
But 183 is more than 50% of the year.
Yeah.
yep,
Yep. Essentially 6 months.
Correct.
Almost, yeah.
yep.
How would you monitor that?
And
Or is
that's,
it pretty much just,
that's the challenge, right?
yeah, okay, but,
Well, it's, you monitor it by, we're going to require that they affirm that they meet all of these requirements.
okay,
And so the concern is having properties that are not owner occupied at all.
yeah,
Right? It's not a requirement right now. So we want people to be living and in control of these homes for a good share of the year. And the reality is that if they affirm that they live there and we discover that they don't live there, then that becomes the challenge.
okay.
Yep. The next one is just the reinforcement or you need to, if there is a complaint or something else out there in the community about a short-term rental, it needs to go to the compliance officer with the police department. So we cleaned that language up quite a bit. I think another really big one is the 300-foot distance between licensed STRs. So 300 feet doesn't seem like a lot, but it's not from the actual residence, it's from the property boundary. So it's the same distance we utilize for all of our mailings on neighborhood meetings, rezonings, things like that. And it can be significant, especially when you're looking at a downtown property.
So, a typical block downtown, how many feet would that be? I mean, I know that they vary, but like, along along Second Street?
It's hard. I mean, a typical block's for like 750,
Oh, okay,
around that.
all right. So there might be two on one block, but probably no more than that.
I don't think there'd be two.
Okay,
I think that would be pretty tight.
okay. I think that was my real question.
Do we have 2 on a block right now anywhere?
I believe so.
I think so, maybe. But I think it grandfathers in existing.
It does. That's a really good point. It does
It does
grandfather
grandfather
in
in.
existing licenses.
But if those licenses, so if somebody sells a property, then the license does not go with the property, is that correct?
Correct.
And this would apply to condominiums and things like that, so you couldn't have 2 in one area.
Correct.
Oh, good point, yeah, okay.
Do we have anybody doing that, short-term rentals with condos or apartments?
I don't know.
Not
No.
apartments for sure.
Yeah, definitely not apartments.
Yeah.
But with the new developments coming downtown, I didn't know
Yeah.
if that would be.
Not yet.
No.
But this is really trying to get us a number of years down, so I think it's a very valid,
Yeah,
very valid point.
Yep. And the other thing is, every year when they renew, we update the website to include all of the owners' contact information, when their license expires, everything about, all of it. So that was the thing that we heard throughout the public meetings was people wanted to just know like who and where and when type of thing and how many people type of thing. So
And so when they renew, do they have priority over anybody else? So if you're at this house and somebody else, but it's within that 300 feet, when their license runs out, do they both get a chance, or does the person who had the original license automatically get the chance to renew before it goes to?
it would be a renewal.
Okay.
Yep. So those are really the big substantive changes.
So, again, do we have, maybe you know this, but Do we have any rentals currently that are in, like multifamily dwellings?
No.
I don't believe so.
No.
So, and you and I had talked about this a little bit before, Mike. I don't know that I particularly like licenses being attached to population, because I think housing stock today in Hudson, growth in that is more condensed housing, apartments, condos, multifamily dwellings. And that's not, I would rather have the licenses be reflective more of the number of single-family homes, the actual homes that are being rented, as opposed to increasing population. Follow what I'm saying? So if we get more, if our population growth is going to be in apartment buildings, apartments, then that's not reflective at all. That would mean that we're gonna be offering up more short-term rental licenses that are gonna be saturating our single-family homes instead of reflecting where that actual growth is, and that would be in apartments. Follow what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
So that would be one thing that I'd like to take a look at. I think it should be more reflective of the actual housing stock that's being used for. So in this case, I would say that if there's going to be any growth in the number of licenses, it should be tied to the growth in the number of
Dwelling units?
Exactly, yeah.
So for example, if I'm following you, if an apartment building would count as one dwelling, or would we subtract all apartment buildings then?
Well, I
Each
would say
dwelling
if they're not being used for short-term rental, I would exclude them all. I would, as population growth.
Okay.
It would
That's a
be
really
by
good point.
specific to unit, right? So if we build take the Atwood property, 120 units, call it, right? That's 120 units. So you'd go by unit instead of just population. Does that make sense?
As opposed to like the 300 people that are living there?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because there could be like 4 people in one unit, there could be,
Okay, so Rich, you're saying that we don't tie it to population, we tie it to the number of units that are being added to, housing units that are being added to the city.
Right, those housing units that would be considered for short-term rental.
But still that number of 750,
Well,
you're comfortable if we choose
yeah.
that?
And maybe that would be adjusted. I'm not as tied to that as I am to the notion that it's tied to population growth as opposed to dwelling growth.
Yeah, that's a really.
So just to be
Yeah.
clear, for the purposes of this particular item, you'll see in the report, I want to make sure I've got the right document. The policy language options exhibit, the policy concept is limit the total number of short-term housing rental licenses to 1 per 750. But we don't say in the draft ordinance language that it is 1 per 750. What we do is we say there are X number, 15 per planning district, 15 for planning districts 1 and 2, and then we also say that the council will set the amount of short-term home rental licenses for the year at the final council meeting in January based on the latest data available. So we didn't, at least in the language that you have before you, we don't have a hard and fast rule based on population drafted into the ordinance. And so we've left it open for the council to make a determination on an annual basis based on whether you want it to be population or units or whatever formula it is that you want to use for determination of the total number of permits to be available.
yep,
So-
but no more than 15 per district currently.
Right. So what I was understanding, what you were saying is that we'll have a set number, pick a number, if it's 25 or whatever, and any additional would be based upon increment of 750 population growth, but that's not actually what it says here.
Correct. It's
Correct.
not hard-coded into the ordinance. Like, that's just a policy consideration. If the council wants to include a specific quota with a specific number, we can surely include it, but we wanted to give you the flexibility to make that determination on an annual basis based on whatever your policy is at that point.
Could I ask for clarification? We're talking about couple of sets of numbers. One, of course, the 750, which we've discussed, and that is in flux. But if we went with 750 or some other number, maybe we choose a different number, there is going to be a total limit to how many could be in the city of Hudson.
Correct.
There will be a total limit, okay.
25.
25 right now, based on that number that we're operating on, which is 750 people. So I'm wanting a little clarification about the planning districts, because if one planning district is really a desirable place for short-term rentals, they may have 15 of the 25 in that district. Is that correct?
They probably will.
That could happen. So then there would only be an option for 10 throughout the rest of the city.
Yep.
I do think making those planning districts clear, whether it's on a city map or something as we go forward, people might have a hard time digging through,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah, I like a visual too.
the zoning, you know, to understand, well, what do you mean by that? What is the
Right.
planning district? Because that may be throwing some people off of it. I just wanted to clarify that
Right.
they still could sort of center in a certain area of town. We don't have a way to prevent it neighborhood by neighborhood.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, has this all been public as of the last meeting, open public's meeting?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Have you gotten more feedback since it's been published? on the change?
Some. Nick's been gathering that. I mean, honestly, this was one of the most well-attended public meeting sessions that we've had for, for other issues, comparatively. It was really good. It was positive, and there was both sides at the table, and then that's all you can ask for.
I really want to thank the city staff, Nick Vivian, all the community members that participated, the Airbnb owners. I mean, I think the amount of engagement that helped drive this was super impactful, and I know it took a lot of time, so I heard from community members over and over how grateful they were, and so I want to pass that feedback on to city staff as well, and I too am grateful. I think this does a very nice job of balancing everything, balancing the right for people to have business, protecting the neighborhoods, the residents. I do think that District 5 is where the bulk of these.
Council district, not planning district.
Sorry, yeah, council, Aldred, yes. Planning District 1 and 2, which covers primarily District 5 and a portion of District 6, and Randy's.
One.
And
Yep.
1, okay. And which are probably the most likely where people are going to want to go, because they want to have that proximity to downtown. I think it's important that we do this for a number of reasons, but I also think it's important that we know that a lot of the homes that are more affordable in our community are in those areas, and those are what often get snapped up for Airbnbs, and so to protect those areas so that we can have more individuals or families moving into our communities. And also at the same time protecting our hotels so that we have plenty of options for people to make sure that they're keeping those in business too. So I'm really grateful for this. And I don't know if we're going to stay on this a little bit more, but I did have some thoughts on the actual ordinance, and I'm fine to table those until we get to that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. So then, all right, so the license, so somebody applies for a license, and then who looks at the license and evaluates the license?
So the license comes in through the clerk's office.
Okay.
It's a license, right?
For clarification, the license application.
License
Application,
application, yep. Becky looks to make sure it's complete. Then it gets forwarded on to community development, right? So we look at parking and some of the other things. We make sure that's complete. Then once the clerk's office and my office look at it, then it goes to the fire department they have to have a fire inspection, right? So, and then that kind of completes the circle. They are required to have a rooming license from the county.
Okay,
as
so they
part
have
of
to have
their-
that before they even apply.
That's part of their application. Yep, yep.
Okay.
And that's the other, and I'm glad you brought this up, because as part of this ordinance too, is there is an affidavit that's required, a notarized affidavit that they have notified all, or made the best attempt to notify all their neighbors within the 300 feet.
Would you please send us a copy of the application, please?
Yes.
Then we can, so that we know what questions are being asked. Yeah. that would be
We
helpful.
have not created the actual form yet, because
Oh,
we're
okay.
still in the draft ordinance form, but
So what have they done in the past then?
it was basically a checkbox, right?
Oh, okay. So then, all right, so assuming that everything checks out and they pass their fire inspection, then do you make the final approval then?
No, we all sign off. Every department signs off.
Oh, every
on
department
it.
signs
Yep.
off. And so once every department signs off, then it's approved?
Correct.
So now with okay, if we're restricting the number of licenses that are available, how will that change the process if there are multiple applicants for one remaining license?
It wouldn't, because we already have let's say we have 12 in 1 and 2, right?
Yeah,
And those are existing licenses, then it's just, you process them as they come in.
so I'm saying, okay, let's say we restrict the city to 25 licenses.
Right.
And we've got 24 approved licenses, and then, so we have one available license, then we have 2 applicants for that license that come in around the same time.
Assumedly, we just handle it in the
First
order in
come.
which they come in,
Oh,
and they're
okay.
complete.
First come, receipt, first
Okay, first come, first served.
served.
Yeah,
Okay,
just like liquor licenses, you know.
okay.
But we have, like with liquor license, we've had times where we've had multiple people that we've had to make a determination. Is that because they turned them in on the exact same day? Just if we're trying to be consistent?
I haven't seen one since I've been here.
Yeah, yes. We haven't had that,
Okay,
competition as of late.
okay.
I mean, in that scenario, I would envision a process where we got 2 in the same day or week, and then we just, council, what's your pleasure?
Okay.
You know,
Okay, so then it would go to the
Well, and
council.
liquor license have a time frame, like, so they gotta make an application, we gotta publish it that they applied and bring it to council. So
Yep.
there's steps for that when issuing a liquor license too.
Well, there are a lot of parallels here that, like, the licenses are a privilege rather than, and come with responsibilities too.
right. And we could
I
handle
think
it
this
similarly.
and I think that this acknowledges that.
So let's play devil's advocate. Suppose, who cares if we fine them 500 to 1,000 for each offense and each violation each day, who cares? Where's the teeth after that? What do we do after that? I mean, it says Wisconsin or federal law where we can go.
It comes to council
Are we gonna
for,
prosecute?
no, you're gonna consider revocation at that point. It'll come back to council as part of that complaint process. So you get, the council will then determine whether or not to allow that license to continue or revoke the license.
And then what? And then we send our police department over there to shut it down, lock it up. Where's the end game? And how much do we get involved in paying for fines and incarceration or legal fees,
Well, there are 2 ways.
lawsuits?
Yeah, there are 2 strategies for handling any code violation. The first would be to issue citations, which result in forfeitures, which ultimately would be handled by your prosecutor, your criminal prosecutor, and ultimately those forfeitures then could wind up as liens against the property. So you would collect them as property taxes are being paid, or the property owner would risk tax forfeiture of their property. So pretty effective in getting collected. The other side is that the other strategy, if they're violating, and it also gives us the authority to file a civil court action to ask the court to enjoin and potentially hold in contempt the property owner. So they're the tools that allow us to enforce like we would for other ordinance violations and code violations.
Any potential lawsuits, how would we end up with that?
Well, it would give us the authority, like we have today, we have the authority to sue property owners who are operating in violation, either without a permit or in violation of our ordinance. And it gives us the opportunity to ask courts to force compliance, which is a primary tool that we have to try to secure compliance with our code.
Sounds messy and expensive.
Well, we would hope that people would comply. But when they don't comply, we need the tools to make them comply or to secure their compliance.
I do agree enforcement is going to be a challenge. We don't have a lot of staff to run around just enforcing things. It is, I share your concern, Randy. I am glad to see the wording such that it is shifted to our code enforcement, which is the law enforcement officer, versus the clerk receiving the complaints. Within the last year, I received some complaints about an Airbnb with lots of cars parking, cattywampus. It was not a good deal over a weekend. And, the complaints came into City Hall, and I did speak directly to the police chief, and he said property owners should call, preferably the non-emergency line if something is actively happening. A lot of people don't want to do that, call enforcement on their neighbors, but it's certainly going to be more effective than waiting till Monday morning and calling the City Hall and speak to the clerk to say, well, such and such happened. And I do think it'll be helpful because in this incident, the neighbors did not know whether that property had a license to operate. Again, not till we got Monday morning, found out, no, they are not licensed. But if it is provided a list on the city website, that'll be helpful. So the neighbors will know, okay, there is someone in my neighborhood operating this, try to have a friendly relationship with them. But anyway, I do share your concern about the enforcement and putting that burden on our staff. It's a critical issue.
But the language, when they are applying for their license, is going to have this in that, so they'll be well aware of the consequences for noncompliance.
Correct.
So so let's say that a complaint came to the council and we had to make a decision, and we made a decision to fine the owner, and the owner didn't pay, then do you have to take them to court in order to collect that money if they refuse to pay?
Well, they're issued citations, so your compliance officer would issue citations.
Okay, so it'd be like a ticket, like a traffic ticket, okay?
It's more about revocation, the consideration of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think the bigger issue you're going to have if you enact the proposed policy changes is that I don't know how many of our short-term rentals are owner-occupied at this point.
Okay.
I don't think there's a huge desire for people to have owner-occupied short-term rental housing. And so I think that's going to be one of the bigger challenges is making sure that these homes are actually owner-occupied, and we're going to have to follow up on that.
And are the existing license holders, is everything grandfathered in for them? So like that is not in our current ordinance?
I believe that's the intent. I didn't take part in the open houses, so I don't know what the justification is necessarily, but that would be my expectation. If they're grandfathered in for one provision, they're grandfathered in for all.
So it'd be for any moving forward
Correct.
that have license?
Correct.
Okay.
And since you bring up the owner occupied, excuse me, sorry, that is, I have a question about that. Can we do that? Can we require that they're owner occupied? What do you see in the state, in other communities?
I think you can require it. Remember, we're talking about the interest in just these very short-term rentals. So, recall we changed our ordinance so that these same requirements are not imposed on longer-term rentals because state law effectively says you have the right to rent out your property for longer periods of time. So, we're trying to get to this sort of minute issue or a very specific issue of dealing with weekends. dealing with a night or two and having people coming and going. I don't know specifically on this one of a situation where the court has ruled on an owner-occupied regulation. Certainly we can follow up on that. But my understanding, based on everything else that we're doing, is that we're acting reasonably to work within and address a particular issue that is legitimate to the concerns of the city. So I believe we can do it. We should probably take a detailed look at that particular clause again, if that's the direction that the council wants to go, to make sure that rental properties are owner occupied. I would say that in the majority of communities around the state that we've looked at, this isn't part of the regulatory scheme because it's going to significantly eliminate or significantly reduce anyway the number of permits that are going to be available, because people just aren't going to want to rent out the homes that they live in for more than 6 months of the year, right? So it becomes, this type of regulation is really at odds with the wanting to allow for the rental of homes in the community. That being said, the reason I believe that it's a policy recommendation is, again, because of control and upkeep and maintenance of the property. And if you live there, you care about your property and you're more likely to take care of it than if it's a rental place that you don't live in and don't have an attachment to. So, can you do it? I believe so.
It's what we heard.
Is it advisable?
Beg your pardon?
That's what we heard from through our
residents.
sessions, was that was a major
Well, I understand
concern.
and I completely understand the reason that does seem appealing. I just wondered if there was
No, there was
precedent in the state of other communities doing that.
There was another question that came up. I don't know that it was a recommendation, but the question was raised as to whether we could prevent corporate entities from owning short-term rentals. Well, the reality is that it is most corporate entities that own short-term rentals, because if I'm an investor, I'm not going to own that rental in my own name. I'm going to put it into an LLC or something else that's going to protect me from liability. So we didn't move in that direction because chances are that's going to be all short-term rentals. And the policy question really is, do you want to allow short-term rentals that people don't live in, or do you want them to be required to be owner-occupied in some respect for some number of days out of the year? I mean, that's really the policy question that needs to be answered.
But if we're talking about grandfathering people that already have these homes, right? Essentially, we're talking about 3 people.
Yeah, they will go away over time.
No, I mean, because we're adding 3, maybe.
Well, the planning districts 1 and 2, but an additional, up to an additional, so we have 12, another 13 that we have.
We're just at 12 right now?
We're at 12, no, are we at 14? I'm sorry.
We're at 12 in the one, in the.
In 1 and 2.
districts in 1 and 2, but then we've
Right
got.
around
2 more.
14.
Yeah,
14, so we have
I missed that
11.
number.
But the grandfathered permits will also go away over time.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Right. So if somebody who's grandfathered in now, they don't renew in a timely manner, and then all of a sudden they come back in 6 months and they're like, oh, wait, I want to still do this, they're subject to the new ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, Mike, what do you want to do?
It sounds like there's some questions that are still wanting to be answered. I mean, staff is comfortable with the ordinance as presented, but
I think it's a matter of stepping them through the options.
yeah, so I mean, if you want to, well, I think we've heard enough in terms of feedback that you want. We can provide that.
I have a question. All right, there was, I'm trying to remember what it said, but there was something that started as of January 1st, 2026.
I think there's 2 on there, Joyce.
Okay, yeah, for license applications made after January 1st, 2026, all short-term home rental properties must be owner occupied. Does that mean that we have a window between now, I mean, so, all right, let's say we halt the moratorium and we start
Yep.
taking applications July 1st.
Yeah, you'd have a
then,
window.
but then they would have from July 1st to
Yeah, you would.
December 31st, they wouldn't have to be owner occupied.
Correct.
Is that what we want?
And as long as we're having that conversation about January 1, 26, under
here's
141-4, letter O, I believe it
Yeah, I
is,
see
the
it.
other one, that talks about the 300 feet. That one, I would rather have that be effective once the ordinance is immediately drawn.
Okay.
I agree.
And the
I think
owner-
the question there was, we didn't know whether there were any applications that had already been submitted. Or whether whether the council wanted a window. So we included that as an option, but certainly any of this language can change and you can decide that you want requirements to be effective upon adoption.
And that item B, there's essentially 6 months left, so I think that's kind of a moot point. If someone's, let's say we approve this tonight, which I think we're not going to, but there's only really 6 months left in the year, so they could rent it that whole time. If we, right? Because we're saying they wouldn't have to be owner occupied because there's only 6 months left in the year.
They would get grandfathered in if they applied, all right, if we had the ordinance or that part start on January 1st, then any applications, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, any applications between now and January 1st would be grandfathered in to the
I
other
gotcha.
rules.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Yes.
So they wouldn't just have a
No,
6-month license.
you're right.
They would.
I
they'd
think
be
it makes
grandfathered.
sense to implement immediately,
Yeah.
once we
I think-
decide.
I think once
Yeah.
we decide, yeah.
We
should
have
implement
more
it.
discussing perhaps, but I think I prefer that.
Yeah.
To get started with
Keep the
it.
moratorium now going until we get the ordinance in place, and the minute
And
the
then
ordinance is in place, then we'll
new
take
rules.
And we'll
applications.
lift them.
And remember, if you extend the moratorium for another 6 months and you adopt a new ordinance before the end of that 6 months, then you can end the moratorium in favor of the new ordinance at any point. So by extending the moratorium for 6 months, you're not automatically extending it out for the full 6 months if you want to terminate it earlier because you're done with your work on the amended ordinance.
Point of information, are we looking for then a first reading? Or would this be a second reading? It's new to us, so my assumption is it's first.
This is our first reading.
Yeah, I view it
Yeah.
as a first reading.
Yeah.
So I'll move for first reading.
Okay.
I'll second.
And then if you could come back with what
Yeah.
we've
Yep.
given you feedback.
No, this is
on.
good discussion. I appreciate it.
Question?
Yeah.
I assume you're going to call for discussion. I don't think we're ready to vote on it yet.
No, well,
No.
So why are we doing a first reading? I don't feel that great about it, but maybe I don't understand the process that we can have a first reading, do a bunch of changes, and then do a second reading?
Yes, that
Yeah.
is
So then-
typically how it's done.
So what we're saying is that at our next meeting, we can approve this without having to suspend the rules.
But can we have more discussion at the next meeting?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And
I'm not that
and maybe
comfortable with
not
it, but-
approve it at that one?
It's
So
up to
by
the
doing the
council,
first
yeah.
reading, it doesn't mean that the next reading we would have to approve.
No, I mean, the council can make a decision, whatever decision they want to make at the next council meeting. If they want to put it off for another
Right.
meeting or two, we can.
right. So, and we would be taking up the moratorium extension right after this.
So I'm sorry.
What I would suggest then, I think everybody's comfortable with the first reading right now, nothing's going to be actually voted on. I would suggest that you contact Mike and the staff with your concerns. One thing, I really do want to look at this population thing, even though we're going to come back and approve this every year. I'm not comfortable with population growth, given that most of it's going to be, I think, multifamily in our future. So, and that has no correlation whatsoever to the existing housing
Right.
stock is what's going to be affected by all of
Yes.
that additional population.
And with condos and townhouses being more growing
well-
downtown, we may have to think about in that 300-foot thing that there's,
Yeah.
for every 25 units, there's one or two, what, you know, there's some number associated, that's not per foot.
Yeah. But there's only room right now, if we move forward with this, for 3 more in that, so it could never be more with this ordinance than 15 in that planning district.
Well, when you talk about larger multifamily, are we going to specify that it can't, you have to own it versus I'm a long-term renter here? Is they have to own it? Because most of the proposals we've had lately have been rental developments, not, I mean, we do have some smaller condo buildings.
No, that's a good point.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
that is a good point. but-
And remember, though, you're not required to approve additional licenses. We could take that language out if you're uncomfortable altogether with increasing, even considering an increase in the number of licenses. And remember, you always have the authority to amend the ordinance if you decide that you want it to be more than 25. You just pass an ordinance amendment that allows it to move to 30 or whatever number you think is appropriate at the time. So if you're uncomfortable with a formula today, we can just take the language out regarding the population, and we can include a hard cap of 25 if that's what the council is most comfortable with.
Sure.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be based on population.
Right, or housing units, it could be on
Yeah,
the.
just look at it and whenever the future councils feel they need to. That's not a bad idea either.
Yeah.
Well, we have to start somewhere, and this is a good place to start.
Yeah.
And then we just make adjustments as we get feedback from the population.
If you have strong feelings on that particular issue, I guess I would appreciate knowing that from this discussion so that we can either include the language about adjustments based on population or dwelling units or whatever, or we just take it out completely and just leave it at 25 and then the council revisits it when the council wants to revisit it.
Yeah.
Well, and how many, does the council agree that 25 is the right number? Or should we lower that, or should I'm not advocating to increase it, but, but I think we should have a discussion about what the council wants. Is 25 the right number to start with?
I think it would be helpful to have a map in front of us with the
Yes.
planning districts, because I just don't operate in that realm.
Sure.
And that's one of my hesitations to vote tonight for it. I like a lot of the work that's been done. I agree with the spirit of so much of it. One of my concerns is I want to make sure it'll stand up.
Yeah.
And, we won't get tossed right away and have to rewrite something. So that is a concern is, what is that planning district and where might it allow, what kind of impact is going to be if all 25, or I guess we only can have 15 in one planning district, but that's pretty intense, I think, though I don't have those districts memorized. So thank you for understanding that. And I do want to just go back to the owner occupied. I still struggle with understanding that a little bit of how we will enforce it, how we will, we're relying on good faith for them and an affidavit, which they do have to swear to and have notarized. Would it be easier to say the opposite? You can only rent it so many. You have to own it. Your name's on the title, not a corporation, not LLC. Would you allow a trust? Because a lot of people, as they're doing estate planning, they might have their home in a trust. Is that allowed? And would it be easier to count how many days of the year you're renting? I mean, we probably all know people who do the 6 month and a day because they're trying to be a resident of another state, pay different taxes, whether that's Arizona, Florida, you name it, and but come back here for much of the year, but not the 6 months and a day. The state looks at that very closely, and they have an army of people to look through documents and make sure that that's done correctly. I just wonder, is that the right tactic? I like the flavor and the intent that these are people that live in Hudson and this is their home. But I just want to make sure we get that crafted in a way that it really holds up.
I would stay away from the ownership piece of it, because I don't think we want to be looking at how people own their properties. Because there are any number of different motivations as to how you own your house or your rental properties or whatnot, and I don't know that we want to be the judge of how folks do that. With respect to looking at it the way that's suggested, certainly that's how some regulations are drafted, that you can rent for no more than X days out of the year. I don't know that that accomplishes what the public expressed insofar as the public is not necessarily concerned about the number of days that a property is rented, but they're concerned that there are actual locals that live in that place. And so, you know, theoretically, we may be talking about two different concepts, although I certainly understand and appreciate the ease that we would have in being able to look at rental records to see, you know, if that was 90 days or whatever the case might be.
Don't
50,
call it
50
ease.
days.
I don't think it'd be ease.
Nothing's easy.
Well,
Nothing's easy.
they're required to collect room tax.
Yep, that's true.
On
That's
their
true.
rentals though, and
Supposed
so
to be paying it.
they should be reporting accurately and remitting accurately. So there would be some, but we can take a look at that as an option.
But they wouldn't have to live there then, so then it might be vacant, absolutely vacant for the other 6 months of the year.
Maybe.
But they have to have a manager.
Or a long-term rental.
Well, they have to have a okay, so
Yeah.
let's say somebody,
I know, I'm just.
no, they live in Florida for the winter and they want to rent their place out up here as an Airbnb. They have to have a manager
Correct.
in the
Property
area in order
manager.
to be able to do that.
Yep, correct.
And then they are going to be careful about hiring a good manager if they're planning to live in that house for the summer.
If we did it just the number of days rented, they wouldn't have to occupy that house. They could just buy the property, rent it for half the year. They would never
Yeah.
have to live
Yeah.
there.
Well, I was thinking we could tie it with you own it, but you only, because otherwise we had the verbiage of 100, you said 210 days. were mentioned,
183.
Then 180 back down, so it's still a number counted, but, because I don't mean to discount that they own it. Lynn, thank you for clarifying that. It's
I have
complicated.
another question. All right, so if they rent it through Airbnb or Vrbo, then Airbnb and Vrbo collect the room tax.
Correct.
Do they send a breakdown of it, or do they just send a check? or-
Nope, it's just one, it's all clumped together. That's
Okay.
what I was gonna say.
So you have
we do
no-
not
no
know.
way of knowing
Correct,
how
right,
much-
Sam? It's all in one. Yep, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all in one.
Good point.
And what happens if they rent it through their own website or something? How do we know about those room
That's on
tax
them
dollars?
to send it in.
Okay.
They have to pay that into the state.
Okay. I want to make sure we close the loop, Nick, that you raised about the capping it at 25 license. I don't think we closed that.
I don't think so.
No.
I would be comfortable taking the number out of there, putting it at 25, knowing that at a future date, we felt we needed more.
I agree.
It's a living document. We can make tweaks to it. That's
And seeing what applications come in.
right. As long as we have the planning districts protected.
Or do we start at 20 and look and watch for applications and increase it to 25 later? Or is that too much? You know, I mean, it's up to the council as far as, there's a lot, if the options are limitless.
Well, we've also talked that there's probably non-licensed holders right now.
Yes.
Renting their homes out. Do we have any idea of that number? I don't know how we'd ever find that right now, but.
It's
know,
tough because they can put them up, take them down, do, whatever too, right? And we can't police it every day.
Well, if they
And
rent
that's
it out
not-
for less than 10 days, 10 nights per year, they're not required to have a license.
Correct.
Correct.
So the way we identify them right now is Becky has software service that goes out and combs Airbnb and VRBO. And then reports back, and then she follows up.
Okay.
So we do have some active combing of the listings.
Okay.
Now, there are some listings out there that are longer term, that aren't subject to our license.
And a lot of them are, there's a couple that are actual hotels that just list on that service.
Yeah.
We thought we had a lot of way more non-compliant ones that we did, but we don't because it's just actual hotels.
We're finding, correct.
So is it state law that there's, that the 7-day minimum for not being a short-term rental, or is that something that is part of our?
No, it's state law prevents us from regulating longer term rentals.
And longer-term rentals are defined by state law as 7 days, 7 nights or more?
I'd have to go back and take a look. We did all the research on it, and that's the reason that we had changed our ordinance.
One of the things that I think will be really helpful is listing who owns the rentals, because right now, I mean, our best way to know is probably from a neighbor who's like, wait, something, there's a rental going on here, so we can direct them to the city website listing it, and they're probably our best resource for finding out when somebody is renting that does not have a license.
So I'm hearing what everybody is saying here, and it seems like we're jumping between different topics and different clusters of topics, and it's all good. I think we're getting in a direction, but there are 8 main draft language options, right? Beginning on page 24. And I think it'd be good just to focus on each box one at a time, stay within that boundary, and then go on to the next box so that you can give staff some direction for that next meeting. I think we've got, again, there's 8 boxes here, and I know, Mike, I think you were going to step through this in the beginning, each one of these boxes, and then...
I stepped through most of them.
Yes, a little bit.
Then we got derailed a little bit.
Yes, so I think it would be good just to maybe start on box 1, which is...
The 750.
The 750. Let's see where we all are, and then let's get to the next one, which then is I think where Joy's concerned most right now is the owner-occupied and those pieces. But there's several amendment options within that second box that I think you need to just hit down on, talk about, and then we can roll on to the next piece. And then I think we'll have a whole visual of what we have.
Yep.
Go ahead,
and I think we're good on the first box. I think we
got an understanding.
Hammered out on that, right?
Okay.
Do you want to restate it, what you think we want? I'm just kidding. How about if I take a crack at it?
Okay.
We don't want to use it per 750 people. Is that correct? We'd rather not tie it to the actual population.
25, right?
25 total is what we're thinking. I mean, there could be a final vote and discussion. And are we still comfortable with the restriction of 15 per planning district? Did that number come from outside of us, or just, Sarah, I mean, it's your district that has so many of them. What are your thoughts?
Well, I absolutely think 15 for planning district 1 and 2. I mean, that's a sword I'm willing to fall on.
And like you, I'd like to see the maps before I think that we'll probably have another discussion next time on this.
Just with a better
based on the
understanding.
maps, yeah.
I had mentioned
But
that.
that definitely gets us there. Has anybody else got anything on those?
For clarification, so you're 15, you're comfortable with 15 and not more and not less? Like, for those two
Well,
districts?
I mean, I frankly would be very comfortable to stay at 12, and I think the community members would too. Or the residents that are living there. And I think at the same time, a reasonable compromise is 15.
Okay.
And it's 15 for planning districts 1 and 2
combined
in total, and then every other planning district would be up to 15 separately. So Sarah's 2 have a cap of 15 in total, and then each other planning district could be up to 15. The reality is, you may well wind up with 15 in planning districts 1 and 2, and that would leave 10 for the rest of the city.
Yeah.
Right.
Second box is the owner-occupied component. And the date, I think what we heard was the date the ordinance is adopted.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And the moratorium stays in place until the date of adoption.
Yes.
Correct. And everything else in that box, I think, is pretty clear.
And we will confirm the viability of that language.
Yep.
For the next
No, thank you.
Sorry, it's scrolling faster. Oh, complaints, very clear in there. Hudson Police Compliance Officer.
I have a question about the previous box. Okay, it talks about revocation of a short-term license, so if it's revoked, they would they be allowed to apply again right away, or would there be, or would they not be allowed to?
Cooling off period type of thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that, all right, if somebody's license is revoked, what are they gonna do? They're gonna reapply right away.
Well, presumably they can. I don't recall that we have a cooling off period, but remember that these licenses are a privilege and not a right.
Correct.
Yes.
So they can reapply. You are under no obligation to grant their permit application if they reapply. And if they're a habitual offender or if they're a significant offender, presumably the city is not going to grant a license on the heels of significant issues where a revocation has happened. And revocations, we would only recommend a revocation if there were some serious violation
Right,
of the
okay.
code.
But with that, I follow that, I mean, they kind of go back to the end of the line, though. They don't retain their, they no longer are considered.
Already.
I think it would be included, when you revoke, I think there would probably be some language in your action at that point to say that,
Oh, we would put it in the action, okay, that makes sense.
Not renewable for.
Because there could be
or-
people waiting in line to get that, and this person, okay.
And if they
Yeah,
got it,
especially, oh, sorry.
if they got it revoked and they applied for a new one, that would be under the new ordinance,
Correct. They would
Right,
not be
wipe out their-
grandfathered.
Yeah.
their grandfather.
Oh, yeah, okay. That makes a difference, mm-hmm.
yep. And again, complaints in that process, detailed enforcement. Just really making it, really driving home the point that people need to reach out to the PD.
Any issues with that paragraph?
None.
Okay. Right, Mike, you're on
All
the next.
active license holders, I think there was general agreement in having it listed on the website,
Yep.
all that information. The 300-foot distance between licensed one, I think everybody wants to see a map of what that looks like currently.
And
Yeah.
I still would like something with, if it's a single-family home versus a multi-unit condominium, that there would be a, the 300 feet distance is for a single-family home, where maybe add something in there that in a multi-unit condominium or townhouses, there's some number per unit, like how many, if there's 25 units, you can have up to 2 or something.
Okay, we can do that. We can look at some math. We can math
Those
that
two should still be included in
in the overall
in the
quota.
overall
Yeah, overall,
total,
so it's
right?
not, yeah, it would be the overall total, but just,
So, okay, so I have a question about, all right, what if somebody owns a duplex? They live in one half the duplex, but they want to rent out the other half. Would that be considered owner occupied?
Yes, because
Yes,
they own the whole
they own
property.
it.
There's
Yeah.
probably no, in that case, there's probably no distinction in ownership. The whole property is very likely owned by the one single individual.
And they're occupying that full property, okay.
Yep.
And I am super sorry, apologetic about this, because I think maybe in that short-term rentals where it says needs to be owner occupied, so I'm bumping back, is that where we would put something like it does not apply to apartments, like it has to be an owned property, or would that, wherever that would go? I think that was a very valid point.
like
Yeah,
you're
that was
not
a good
renting,
question.
you're not renting the condominium, you
Own
own
it.
your condominium, then
And
you
you-
could apply to do that.
Yep.
So if
Right.
you're in a 25 unit
Apartment building that you're
apartment, but if you,
renting.
not renting, if you own your
Got it.
property,
Yes,
but the 300 feet can't apply to that because,
right, right.
It's possible the condo units would have their own rules to
Yes.
something like this.
probably, yeah.
More than
Yeah,
likely.
and then
You're right.
You brought up rental properties. I would think that most leases would probably prevent you from renting the property out
Subletting it,
or
yeah.
subletting
Yeah.
it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
not
think we have
so,
to worry about
Okay.
that.
I'm not
Okay.
so concerned about rentals.
All right,
Consider the building across the street. That's 3 condos.
Right.
Is it, just so that I can understand as we think about drafting proposed language, is the thought that, I think most of our condo developments would be smaller condo developments. Is your thought that you want to allow multiple condos in a particular development to be eligible for short-term rentals? I just want to understand what we're trying to draft.
Yeah, maybe I'm just thinking, I always, it's like you would own if you owned your condominium. If there are, some rent, some own, but if you owned your condominium, you should be able to be eligible to apply. I mean, to have a short-term rental. But that
Understood, and I understand that. In most cases where we have condos in town, we have, let's say 2 to a dozen condos that would be in a relatively small proximity to one another. If we eliminate the 300 feet, that would be to allow
more than one
in a condo development. And is that what you're trying to get to?
That's what I was kind of trying to get, yes.
Could we choose like a percent? 20 to 25% of the building could be, so if it was an 8-unit building, 2 of them could be eligible. Is that what you're looking for, or something like that to define how many
Yeah.
could be in there?
Yep.
But not using the 300
Not
feet?
using feet. I don't care how you do it. I just think there could be one more than.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Some way of limiting how many, but allowing more than one,
Yes.
depending on how many are there.
okay,
I don't know.
I think I know what you're.
Tricky wording, but yeah.
Get it.
A homeowners association agreement would supersede our
100%. Homeowners association declarations and bylaws are contractual restrictions on the use of their own property. We have nothing to do with it.
Right, so if they don't like, if the homeowners association doesn't like our ideas and our ordinance, they can override it by putting it into the association rules. Okay.
But they can be more restrictive, but not less restrictive.
Correct. That's right.
Okay.
And then the last one was the self-certification form for all of the things that we've talked about tonight. I think everybody was in favor of creating that form.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, so, first reading, we don't have to take any action on this. We know it's the first reading, and I guess my question to you, Nick, is it truly the first reading, seeing as how we don't have anything here in front of us other than concept?
Well, you do have an ordinance with red lines.
But yeah, I know, but I mean, as far as the options, nothing, we don't have it all detailed yet, what it's gonna look like. And it's just a question. I would think that first reading would have to be,
You can treat it how you'd like. If you'd like to treat this as a first reading, you can. If you want to see a formal final that you could suspend the rules on at the next meeting.
right now, we'll treat this as a first reading. We'll deal with it when it comes up again, whether that's a continuation or the second reading of this or the first reading, whatever the draft is that comes through.
And I'm just going to state my only objection again is partly how much community input we've had on this. And anyone who's tuning in tonight, trying to follow this discussion, they don't have the final ordinance in front of them to say, oh, they voted for this.
Right.
Because we've given lots of instruction and input to staff and our attorney. And so it's less clear to me. And if we are going to put in a moratorium in place, I don't see why we have to do this as a first reading, but I may.
You're missing the concept on first readings.
And I'm just trying to be clear, Randy, to the public, because they are so engaged in the
This is a
topic.
concept that we're talking about. It's a framework to move it forward. Typical government. So at the end of this meeting, I'll ask for something else on the agenda.
Whoa. Okay. Everybody good? You don't have to take an action on this right now. It's just considered as first reading. All right?
Don't we have to take a vote that we accept this
No.
as a first reading?
No.
No? Okay.
Is there a motion?
There's a
Are you
motion.
sure?
Motion and a
Oh, I see
second.
what you're asking because of the motion. Was there a second to it?
Yeah,
Yes.
they.
Okay,
right
well, we
away
can
did.
vote
Randy
on
made
it.
the
I mean,
motion,
there
I
was a motion.
seconded it.
It doesn't need it, but as long as it's out there, that's fine. All those in favor, treating this as our first reading concept,
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Motion is approved. Discussion and possible action on ordinance 9-25, extending a moratorium on the issuance of new short-term rental licenses.
And again, I just wanted to be prepared because I knew that we would have a good policy discussion today.
All right, Mike, suggestion, how long you want to increase it?
It doesn't,
stated
like,
for 6 months.
as the attorney said, as soon as we get through this, we can end it at any point.
I see what you're saying.
So recommendation would be to continue it with the
Yeah.
With the
the
date?
ordinance provided.
And our plan is to keep our foot on the gas and keep,
We're gonna keep rolling.
okay. I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve.
Suspend the rules.
Yeah, you gotta suspend the
Oh,
rules.
that's right, it's ordinance. Okay.
We'll just suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion is second to suspend the rules, roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Rook?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved, rules are
I just
suspended.
forget when it's an ordinance.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Is an ordinance, roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Rook?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Can I go first?
Uh,
May I?
You gotta turn and
Oh,
ask Kip
Kip.
if that's okay.
Kip's first.
He's already standing.
He's giving you the hook.
I was gonna say, it's all there, we're busy. It's the mayor's pleasure.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, obviously, this has been a lot of time for our staff and myself. And again, a huge thank you to Nick O'Brien, our GIS Associate Planner, for all the work that he's put into this, as well as Tiffany Weiss, our city planner. It has not gone unnoticed. You'll see all the other projects that we're working on in your packet. There's a lot going on, and it's positive, it's fun, it's exciting. So with that, I will turn it over to Kip unless there are any questions.
Anybody? All right, thanks, Mike, and thanks
Thank
again
you.
for all the work you guys
Thank you,
do.
everyone.
Thank you.
Kip?
Kip Peters, Utility Director. Just a couple updates. I didn't have a whole lot in the packet for you tonight. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened since I actually wrote this and submitted it. So the containment is up on the Deer Path Tower. They are currently working inside the tower, sandblasting the interior, getting that all ready for paint. And the only other thing really that I had was the 11th Street project. Water and sanitary are completed on the 11th Street project. So
exciting.
I believe maybe Mike will talk more about stormwater or where they're at, or storm sewer where they're at now. So that's pretty much my update. So, questions on anything? Thank you.
Thanks, Kip. Mike?
Good evening. I'm Mike Mraz, Director of Public Works. So 3 main things that I want to highlight tonight for all of you in the public that's still watching. O'Neill Road, the reconstruction of O'Neill Road has been set for July 7th start date, so a little later than what we were anticipating. Having said that, our engineering team and intern will be out doing all the staking previously to that to get the project ready. So, and also pass along any communications to the local businesses for access, so on and so forth. So July 7th, that project is starting. Second thing, big thing in the parks is the summer concert series kicks off this Thursday. So come on out, enjoy some nice weather, some music, and then the summer concert series runs all the way through August 19th this year. So music pretty much every Thursday night, and then some Tuesdays sprinkled in there and Saturdays. So lots going on in the Lakefront Park for music this summer. Thanks to Deb Andrews for putting that together. So it's a lot of work getting the bands and so on and so forth and staying under budget. So big shout out to Deb. And then lastly, just to clarify, the residential recycling and refuse pickup. I know a couple of you had some questions after the last meeting, my last update, so just kind of want to clarify that. So Waste Management will be still moving all residential refuse pickup to Wednesdays. That does include recycling as well. So refuse and recycling will be moving to Wednesdays. They did give a new kind of tentative start date of July 14th. So they did push it back a couple weeks just to get their resources in order, get their communications out. If there's any other further changes, I'll be sure to bring those forward and pass those along. So if you want to direct quote me in the paper, you can ask me after. So, but yeah, that's kind of the tentative timeline for that. So, any questions?
Anyone?
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Mike. All right, I don't have anything. Anybody?
I do. Over the past few council meetings, we've had issues in understanding procedure. So I'm requesting at our next agenda under chapter 23-6, that we review how we operate. And I've heard many different times, Nick gives you an opinion, Brett gives you an opinion, you base your own decision on your opinion, which is great. That's what you're supposed to do as a chair. But we need to go through the Robert's Rules of Order revised, as per se our ordinance does. So people can understand, you do first ordinance read, you do second, or you suspend and approve. I think there's a lack of understanding there. I'm not assuming anything. I think we need to clarify our procedures so we don't run into these kind of things that seem elementary. So I'm requesting that be on a future agenda. Doesn't have to be tomorrow or the next meeting. And then the other thing is I'd like to.
Everybody got their Robert's Rules?
I don't care if we have to spend money to buy some. I think we need to have it done.
I'd love to follow our municipal code, because we're supposed to have reports from each, public safety is supposed to give a report each meeting. Public Works is supposed to, we could really dig into the municipal code. It'd be good. I agree, Randy. Let's study it, discuss it, Robert's Rules. I'm with you.
So, and then I'd just like to congratulate Karen Ducko on her
Oh, yeah.
retirement.
Today was our last day.
Yeah, yeah.
She'll be missed.
Thank you.
She'll be
Anybody
missed.
else?
I just have a follow-up to surveys. I've gotten a couple of the surveys back regarding budget. If you guys can finish those up, and whoever hasn't, send those in to myself or Sam Hasu. And then I am passing out, just like I said at the last meeting, we will grab each one. There's two different departments here, fire department and police department. We're looking at just giving begin to give us direction as to how our priorities that you have for our departments. We'll do two departments at a time over the next few meetings. So this is the first two, fire and police. Take a look at it, please turn them in. It'll kind of give us all an idea of how you want to see things shaped for the city. So, all right, so I'm gonna hand these out that way. Other than that, I'm done.
Anybody else?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.